What is going on, Jet fans? Matt O'Leary back with another video, and today I'm talking about a trade that feels inevitable coming for the New York Jets. It just seems like these things are lining up a little bit too perfectly. So earlier today, we found out that the Jets are shopping Carl Lawson, and I say found out, well, like it's not obvious. Like they weren't discussing this for weeks. He was inactive the first week of the year. He was inactive at other points this year. The Jets have a plethora of edge rushers. His skill set has unfortunately diminished due to injuries. And like this just seems like, again, the inevitable. And it's like one of the worst kept secrets that the Raiders and Browns are the teams that are interested in trading for an edge rusher and adding like someone like Carl Lawson. And obviously, both those teams have a stud pass rusher in Myles Garrett on the Browns and Max Crosby on the Raiders, but they're looking for depth options in a time where both teams feel like they are still in the mix. And this one, Carl going in via trade is not a surprise at all. And him potentially being linked to those teams is not very surprising. Next step. Supposedly, the Raiders and Hunter Renfrow are trying to work on a deal.
From everything I've been told, the Raiders have been trying to move Renfrow really going back to last season. And unfortunately, they haven't been able to find a suitor, in large part because of his contract. But I can tell you that both sides want to find a healthy separation. It's a mutual agreement that a change of scenery for Renfrow would benefit everyone involved. Really comes down to a fractured relationship with Josh McDaniels.
A Carl Lawson for Hunter Renfrow swap feels like something that could absolutely happen. And it's very, very rare to see a player swap. I think the Jets probably would, or originally were looking to get some sort of draft capital back for Carl Lawson, but it's kind of like I scratch your back, you scratch mine. The money is relatively close on these guys when looking at the contracts. We'll do that in a little bit, but for Hunter Renfrow, that's not my preference on a wide receiver addition. I would prefer the Jets add an outside receiver so you can move Garrett Wilson around the lineup a little bit more, have him in the slot. You could also have Lazard play as a big slot. A guy like Courtland Sutton is someone that I've really grown fond of in terms of trying to acquire someone because I think he would be a really good fit and a red zone threat. But Hunter Renfrow is stylistically very different. He is someone who this year has lined up 92.2% of the time in the slot. And he is someone over his career who does not drop the football, which is a much needed upgrade for this Jets wide receiver unit. 11 drops in 5 years. That's a 4.2% drop rate. This year, 8 catches, 73 yards. Last year, 36 catches, 330 yards in 10 games. He is a few years removed from having a monster 1,000-yard season. He will not be an 1,000-yard receiver. The Jets will not be asking him to be an 1,000-yard receiver. They essentially would be asking him to be their third receiver, which is something that I think he could handle. And you would have a base at that point of Hunter Renfrow in the slot, Lazard and Garrett Wilson on the outside. And he's someone who's 27 years old. He'll turn 28 in December. And something that he's very good at is getting separation. He's not a contested catch guy. That's going to be Alan Lazard's role. He's not a guy who's going to win on the outside. He is going to win over the middle of the field and be a yards after the catch kind of player. That's what his role is going to be. And in terms of their contracts, I mean, we'll take a look at Carl Lawson's money. He has some void years tacked on, but that won't be the Jets' problem after they move him. And for Hunter Renfrow, he has an $11.15 million salary for next year, but none of it's guaranteed. He has zero guaranteed money next year. So you could theoretically get out of it after a year if you didn't want him on your books. And it's possible that they just want that as a rental and just trying to hold down the fort, and try to push this thing forward. And I get it. Like, I want Xavier Gipson to get reps, and that's part of the reason why I wouldn't go with a slot receiver. I'd rather go with a bigger outside receiver. But it's very, very risky for the Jets to just say, you know what, we are completely comfortable with Randall Cobb as wide receiver 3 and Xavier Gipson right there, UDFA. and we're just ready to rock with them because you're one injury away from being in really, really deep doo-doo at the wide receiver spot. And this adds a little bit more professional depth. Again, Hunter Renfrow is not my preferred option, and Hunter Renfrow, I think, is pretty far removed from the guy that he was a few years ago. But for whatever reason, it just seems like it hasn't clicked with Josh McDaniels. And that's not surprising at all because Josh McDaniels ran people out of town when he went to Denver for a short time and has ran people out of town when he's gone to Vegas. So not a surprise at all that Hunter Renfrow is going to get traded. And I would imagine, maybe not this year, but it wouldn't be shocking if in the offseason Devontae Adams gets traded somewhere. Just things seem to be going sideways in Vegas, and can't really say I'm all too surprised. For Carl Lawson, back to him for a second before we get out of here in this video. I'm bummed that it's gotten to this point. I was a really, really big fan of the signing. Unfortunately, guess what? He hurts his Achilles in 2021. He was absolutely dominating training camp that year. He was looking spectacular in training camp, was unfortunately beating Mekhi Becton pretty badly, but he looked stellar. He gets hurt in the preseason and unfortunately ends up missing the entirety of the 2021 season. Comes back in 2022 and I thought was solid last year. He wasn't stellar by any stretch of the imagination. He was solid. He was a solid player for them, but it felt like there was still a little bit missing, and you were hoping that a year removed from the surgery that he would be in a much better spot as a pass rusher this year. And unfortunately what happened, he missed a ton of time in the summer with a completely different injury. His back's been bothering him, and that has plagued him this year. He looks much, much slower. He was someone who could win with speed or power when he was signed here. And even at times he did that last year. But I just think for him, the back and a lack of training camp has really, really, unfortunately, derailed him. And, sometimes it happens. He signed a contract that didn't work out. I'm bummed it didn't work out. At the time, I liked the signing a lot. I thought, he was an emerging edge player and was excited to see him on a line with Quinnen Williams. And you got to see a little bit of that in 2022. But unfortunately, in 2023, that ship has sailed, and now you would have an opportunity. Not that they haven't really done this already, but Bryce Huff, Jermaine Johnson, JFM, and Will McDonald are your edge rushers that you're going to be rotating around. And I like that a lot. I think that is a really, really solid group right there. And, you get Will McDonald in on more third down situations. They've been thankfully listening to us and finally playing Bryce Huff more, which is a major win. And please extend Bryce Huff. And Jermaine Johnson's been really solid the last 2 weeks, and it looks like he's finally catching on a little bit. And still, somehow, some way, all these years later, John Franklin Myers is still underrated because he is just continuing to be the quiet producer for this team. And, that's it. That's the reality. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if we see a Hunter Renfrow for a Carl Lawson trade, and I think it's coming relatively soon. So if Carl Lawson is, for whatever reason, still on this roster on Sunday, if this doesn't happen before Sunday, I would expect him to be inactive. It would almost be shocking if he played on Sunday or was made active. That would be a massive mistake. He will be in. I can almost guarantee you he'll be inactive on Sunday against the New York Giants. So keep a close eye on this one and don't be surprised if it happens. Once again, please make sure to subscribe. Give a like on the video before you head out. Once again, I'm Matt O'Leary, and I'll catch you next time.